Hey friends. Had kind of a great day today. We finished up our drive home from Tucson, where I did my last handful of video posts. Had a lovely, lovely spring break out there. And I had booked, it was kind of an interesting situation, and it all sort of weird, but it worked out great. I had booked an ice skating lesson for my daughter today. And we went out there. We got up this morning at a hotel. We made it about halfway, left from a hotel this morning, and got back just barely in time to walk in the house, grab our skates, and get out the door to get over to the ice skating rink. And Annalise had a blast. She was laughing the entire time. It was so much fun to watch her do this. You know, it's weird how these things work. Sometimes timing is everything, and consistency is everything. So I found myself, there's something that I've been thinking about. It's a bit of an amorphous or not fully formed set of thoughts about how development works. And I'll explain what I mean. But basically, when I think about a young person, a young mind, a young body, and the way that we respond to new things, when we're in a kind of, it's like the best way, the thing that I learned that has given me the best vocabulary for describing it is when I studied, can't even call it studying, I just went to a couple of seminars on Montessori pedagogy. And I learned that in the first 6 years of life, children are in what they call the absorbent phase. They're in a phase when essentially the child doesn't really break things down into parts yet. They're not really, and it's interesting because my daughter definitely does some of that, but that's not the primary focus of that period of time. The primary focus of that period of time, or the primary way of receiving information and the primary way of learning in that period of time, is to be absorbent, to absorb things almost in a kind of non-verbal, non-literal, almost like just a sponge. And some of the features of that phase are that a child kind of resists breaking things down into components. They just want to feel the whole. They just want to do the whole thing. They don't want to think about all the different things, all the different details of what they have to do to stand on a set of skates. They just want to get on a set of skates and go. And I encounter this all the time in our musical learning because my daughter plays violin, and playing violin is something that requires, dozens and dozens of intricate individual things that all amount to a whole. And the whole is incredibly complicated. It's not something you can just like kind of ballpark aim for the whole and expect to arrive very close to the desired result. You have to break things down. And there's an art to doing that. There's an art to breaking things down on the sort of teacher side that still gives the child the impression of doing essentially absorbing the whole, but they're only absorbing, but the whole becomes just one little individual part. And then little by little, you can start to stack those, you can start to combine those, and they do amount to something more. And so the work of breaking things down has to be done by the parent, because the child is unlikely to do much of that. And it's a phase of learning, a phase of life that I've just become kind of fascinated by, partly because my daughter is there, and partly because it seems to offer an opportunity to meet various domains of life, various practices or experiences and there's a real openness to being molded by those experiences at that age. And my feeling, I've had this intuitive feeling that I want to introduce certain things while she's still in that phase, because I get this, again, very intuitive sense that if you encounter things, if you encounter experiences or certain types of learning, certain types of practice, when you're still in that phase, they sort of just become part of you. In other words, you don't think about, I'm good at this, I'm bad at this, I am familiar with this, I'm not familiar with this. You just kind of receive them into the core of your being, because you're this absorbent sponge and you just take it all in. And I have watched this to some extent with my daughter, but I can't say that I've done anything like a very deep scientific study of this conviction that I have. But my conviction is basically, I want to introduce as many things, not just like in a scattershot way, but in a kind of really, really deliberate way, to bring online all the different forms of intelligence, all the different forms of consciousness capacity that are important, that she's going to want in life. And so things I think about, like, musical awareness, kinesthetic awareness, the body, the way the body feels in space, balance, feeling, emotional awareness. We're already bringing in an awful lot of intellectual and narrative awareness. We're reading books at bedtime now that are books for 14-year-olds, 12 to 14-year-olds. We're reading like Newbery metal books. And it's the kind of stories that my daughter seems to crave. She seems to that's what she wants to read. Now, we had to introduce those, obviously. She didn't just randomly start asking for them on her own. But once we did introduce them, it was really kind of like, okay, we're all here now. Like, this is just what we do now. We very, very rarely go back to reading picture books. And so anyway, though, I've had this sense that bringing bringing certain things into my daughter's life at this age is really key, because it sets her up to have a lifelong relationship with them in a way that, of course, you could start in a year or two. It's not like any of this stuff is like, it's not like I have ambitions for her to necessarily like become a world-class skater or become a professional gymnast or anything like that. It's just, I want her body and her mind intuitively feeling like they understand how this works, intuitively feeling like this is part of me. A certain kind of physical awareness is simply part of who I am. It's just how I work. Music was like the most obvious one to me. As a musician myself, it was early, it was high on the list, and it came early. But so today I had the experience of kind of feeling like, okay, like it's interesting that I wanted to come back to skating. I had this intuition, like we should come back to skating. We should start, because skating is really, she's not a great skater yet. She just loves the idea of it. She'll go out in the living room and pretend to be a figure skater. And I'm like, well, maybe she's trying to tell us something. Maybe she actually wants to learn this. And so, and I mean, she just had the time of her life, smiling, laughing. The coach was in a great mood, and they just had a great time together. It was beautiful to watch. And as I was skating around the rink, watching her with her coach, I thought to myself, gymnastics. It'd be fun to bring gymnastics back. It's one thing that she resonated with. It seemed to really, she really enjoyed it. And it brings that kind of like tips of the fingers all the way to the tips of the toes, head to toe, front and back body, left and right body, balance, strength, awareness, movement. All these things come into play. And I was like, I feel like we took her out of gymnastics a few months ago because it was just getting too full and she wanted to do something else on that day anyway. So, but all that is to say, it had been on my mind as something to come back to. And today, I'll be darned if we weren't in the car driving back home from the ice skating rink, and she said, "Papa, I miss gymnastics. I want to go back to gymnastics. When can I go back to gymnastics?" And I was like, wow, you're reading my mind, child. We are so on the same wavelength. And and so I both took that from her as a sort of like, okay, cool, good to know, but obviously also as a massive affirmation of my own intuition and my own sense that like I do want to keep that ball in the air and somehow bring that in for her. And it's always nice because, again, I feel like I have this impression of what it means to be introduced to these things at this age. I have this impression of what it does to a young mind to encounter certain disciplines and start certain types of awareness at a certain age. But I'm just me, right? I don't know, and it's not something I've researched. I don't know either from experience or from scientific research that this is how it works. So when my daughter gives me these just super clear affirmations and just like goes right through the bullseye of what I'm thinking, it tells me, okay, It's like, it's just meant, it's almost like it's karmically, it's designed to affirm that I'm picking up on the right kind of karma and like steering the ship the right direction. So that was how we, I mean, truly in the first couple of hours of being home from spring break, that was what came through. So it's an exciting journey, man. Nothing like it. Now I'm going to get some rest, because it was a long drive. But thanks for watching. I appreciate you. Have a wonderful day. See you soon.